my gosh! Can you believe what's happening to Diddy right now? Locked away in a tiny cell for 23 hours a day with absolutely nowhere to escape. I mean, we're talking about the man who once had the music world eating out of the palm of his hand, and now he can't even choose when to use the bathroom. His new reality behind bars is absolutely shocking. And trust me, what I'm about to tell you will leave you speechless.
There were injuries during the February 22nd incident. Multiple incarcerated individuals were medically assessed and treated for minor injuries in the facility. So I guess there was no knives around, Murphy said. 2 incarcerated individuals sustained injuries requiring outside medical treatment. That's the knife play. Hey, you know? Now, Diddy's sitting here going through all this, got to go through his trial, you know, so we're going to show some different pictures of Diddy so you understand. Diddy going through it right now, right? So now, Murphy refused to comment on the injuries sustained by the inmates involved in the fight. He added no jail employees were injured. See, that's all they care about. No jail employees were injured. Hey, you know? So Diddy caught up in all this melee right now. Mango said his sources in the federal jail said more than 40 prisoners were involved in the melee, adding race riots and becoming more common, right?
I'm still reeling from that courtroom scene. Did you see his son? Completely broke down in tears. My heart was literally shattering watching that poor boy as those bombshell revelations came pouring out of his attorney's mouth. It's just too much. How did someone who literally defined hip-hop culture end up in such a nightmarish situation? From private jets and champagne to concrete floors and isolation, the fall from grace is giving me whiplash. Let me spill all the tea about what's really going on inside those prison walls and what this means for everything Diddy ever built. His empire, his family, his legacy, everything is hanging by a thread right now.
The first is the vast majority of the people who were held at MDC Brooklyn have not been convicted of anything. They're presumed innocent. And that presumption of innocence doesn't mean anything if we're going to put them in a place and say, well, you know, there's reason to believe that you've committed a crime, and so now you deserve to be, punished extraordinarily. Okay, that's not how the American criminal system works. That's just not a way that other human beings, should be treated. Everybody's life at MDC Brooklyn matters equally. Certainly matters to the people who love and care about them, and we need to be treating those human lives with dignity. And so, you know, it's just not. It's not a tolerable situation. And unfortunately, until there's more political will to really implement more meaningful reforms at the jail and address the chronic understaffing, the intransigence, the lack of adequate medical care, you know, all these issues that we've been discussing today, it's going to remain a hellhole.
There's no question. He presumed because it would be very difficult for someone like to be a flight risk. Okay, so you figure I'm selling the jet. Here are the keys to the jet. Here's the collateral to my $50 million mansion in Florida. I am flying to New York on my own accord. I will turn myself in. So you rationalize or convince yourself I'm so high profile in public and I'm going there on my own. They're not going to take me in. But we know the government likes to make examples out of people, and the government's doing a good job here. They're focusing what too many people tend to forget about, the victims. So while it's difficult for Diddy, I know, to be confined in a cell for 23 hours a day, it might not be as hard as the victims they allege he created. Let's focus on them. Let's put them first. And if he can begin to do that, he's going to get more of what he wants, freedom and potentially bond. But certainly, if I were a betting person, I would have bet that he was going to walk out of there into his mansion on 24 hours a day lockdown, even with security guards outside the house. He's not going anywhere, but at least he's in the mansion.
Let me tell you, this is not your average celebrity jail stint. The Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, it's absolute chaos in there right now. Can you imagine? They just had a violent race riot with over 40 inmates that turned the entire place upside down. Everyone's on lockdown, and when I say lockdown, I mean lockdown. I just got the inside scoop from G. Burrell, you know, the former enforcer who's seen it all, and he didn't sugarcoat anything. Phones are probably shut down. You'll basically be on your bed all day. I'm talking 23 hours of pure isolation every single day. Can you even imagine what that's doing to someone like Diddy, who's used to controlling everything around him? Even though Diddy and that other high-profile inmate Luigi Monet weren't even involved in the riot, they're suffering the consequences anyway. Everyone's trapped in this pressure cooker situation. There are federal enforcement officers standing guard outside like they're expecting World War III to break out, and every single call, every tiny movement is being watched like a hawk. The tension in that place must be absolutely unbearable right now.
This is where I bring in Gene Borello. He's a former mob enforcer who served time in the very same unit where Luigi is housed. And as of now, Luigi's not allowed to have visitors in that unit. Gene, good to have you back on the show. Thanks so much for doing this. What is a modified operation plan? What does that look like?
So if it's a lockdown, the whole building is locked down, it means it's a security risk, which means they will not let you out. Under any circumstances, you have to be escorted by a cop to go anywhere. Like I said, just for a lawyer, you'll only be able to be escorted to the lawyer, and that's it. Which means that if it is locked down, there will be no, in order to shower, you have to come out the cells one by one, and you get like 3 minutes each to even shower. So that means that like you just said, it's a race riot. So they can't let nobody out until they know for sure that people aren't gonna attack each other when the cells open up.
So, I mean, it sounds like it's miserable. If you can't have any freedom within an arrangement where you have no freedom, it sounds like this is going to make a lot of people mad.
Well, they don't really care. And let me tell you what's going to happen here. It could even go, if it was gang members, let's just say if it's like two big, powerful gangs that are killing each other, they'll lock it down countrywide in the feds. They won't let nobody out in the feds because when gangs beef with each other, it goes through the whole system.
We sorry to interrupt. We heard that, where Luigi and Diddy are, it's different, right? It is not the same.
Yes.
It's not your dad's lockup.
Right.
How will this modified plan, though, affect them? And might these race riots move their way into that unit as well? What happens to them? How different will their daily activities be?
Well, like I said, they're in dorms, so you're just going to be on your bed, but there'll be no phones. I mean, if you get a nice cop, I mean, I'm pretty sure actually, no, the phones are probably shut down, so you won't even be able to use the phones at all. You'll basically just be on your bed all day. You go to the bathroom and back to your bed. It depends on the officer you have on. He might let you sit in the day room. Not supposed to, but you won't be able to go into the room and work out. You have to stay on your bed, and that's it. There's no commissary. There's no movement in the building. There's nothing. Just get your meals, and that's it.
Can't imagine that. I can't imagine any of it, for starters. But I have about 10 seconds left, but I have to ask you this. How long could this go on?
So I've seen it go on for a month. It depends on who's beefing with each other. If it's something that can trickle down to all the prisons, they won't let you move. They don't care how long it is. It has to be cleared up.
And just when you thought things couldn't get more intense, Diddy's legal battle is heating up faster than a summer sidewalk. The charges are seriously heavy: racketeering, sex trafficking, transporting people for who knows what kind of illicit activities. Everyone is talking about this case, and I mean everyone. His legal team has been fighting tooth and nail to get him out of there, begging for bail, pleading for a transfer to somewhere less horrific, but the judge is not having any of it. The decision came down like a hammer. Diddy is staying put in that prison cell, period. End of story. I can't even imagine how his attorneys are feeling right now. Their entire strategy has shifted to just trying to prove he won't run if they let him out. Meanwhile, every single day he spends in that cell is just adding fuel to this media firestorm. And with the trial not happening until May 5th, 2025, this drama is only going to get more intense. I'm on the edge of my seat.
So, we have heard a lot about the prosecution's case against Diddy. And we've heard news conferences, we've seen raids, we have heard what the federal government has, and one of the things they talked about right out off the jump was they seized tapes. And a lot of people thought, oh my God, there are celebrities on these tapes involving freak-offs.
Right. Well, we have heard allegations about other celebrities connected to Diddy, but the people on Diddy's side say we're getting things all mixed up here. And
she blames the media.
Right. She being Tenny Garagos, who is one of the attorneys representing Diddy in the federal indictment, in the criminal case against him. And she sat down with Harvey and Mark Garagos for their Two Angry Men podcast. Yes, Tenny is Mark's daughter, but this is the questioning. You got into her talking about what Diddy's defense was going to be.
I got to tell you,
they're really preparing those witnesses, and they're trying to establish one of three things. The difference between sex trafficking and consensual sex is force, fraud, or coercion. They are going through their victims and they're saying, how can I establish force? How can I establish coercion? Probably not so much fraud, right? Because ultimately, this case is about sex trafficking. You know, there's prostitution counts, and prostitution is different. Prostitution just means that the sex happened, but there was an exchange of something of value. But the feds aren't trying this case to convict Diddy of prostitution. They want to get to sex trafficking. So their entire focus right now is to prove that the sex involved that force or that coercion, right? Was it people being drugged against their will? Was there security? Were there weapons, right? That's why even though he wasn't charged with the weapons violation, they really talked about the rifles, the assault rifles in the indictment. So I think that's going to be the focus of the Department of Justice in this case. How can we prove that force? How can we prove that coercion?
Wait until you hear about the conditions inside. They are beyond horrifying. Diddy isn't just in regular prison. He's in what they call the hole. It's this tiny, windowless cell where they've stripped away literally everything that could make life bearable. I heard, and this just breaks my heart, that he's sleeping on a concrete floor with nothing but a paper-thin mattress. Can you imagine? The man who once slept on Egyptian cotton sheets now can't even get a decent night's rest. And get this, he's so paranoid about the prison food that he's refusing to eat it. He thinks someone might tamper with it. I mean, can you blame him? The worst part? Other inmates are taunting him by shouting his own lyrics at him. Talk about a cruel twist of fate. The very songs that made him famous are now being used to torment him. It's like something out of a nightmare, and it really shows just how far he's fallen. From king of hip-hop to being mocked in the hole, I just can't wrap my head around it.
And I presume he's been in custody this whole time, right?
Well, yeah, I think he's been in custody since he was arrested last night. And what we're going to see next is a court hearing today, the unsealing of this indictment, which will tell us exactly what he's charged with and what the factual allegations are. He may be asked to plea, and importantly, there'll probably be some discussion of whether or not he can be released on bail, which I expect the government to oppose given the seriousness of these allegations and the fact that he's a potential flight risk. But all of that's going to come up pretty quickly because he's going to want to get out of jail.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very wealthy man, so that bail will have to be very, very high if you want to keep him there. Based on your experience with cases in federal courts, how serious could these charges be? And how can we expect, well, we heard a little bit from what Combs' lawyers have said, which is they feel this whole thing is unjust, but what sort of charges could we be looking at? How serious?
Well, I think the charge is going to be very serious. I mean, first of all, you don't go after somebody like Sean Combs unless you have very serious charges to bring. You know, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York is not messing around. So they think they have a strong case. They think they have evidence.
You can't recork this bottle. You know, it's impossible. And if he could go back in time, I'm sure he would have given Cassie, $100 million to make this go away at this point. But it's impossible. And I think it's, he could be looking at obviously not just a significant change in his life moving forward in the public sphere. You could be looking at real jail time. I mean, we're sitting here doing this interview right now. We don't know whether or not Diddy's going to get bail or if he's going to get released. He has one of the best attorneys in the country, Mark Agnifilo, tremendous attorney. But I think that they could very easily keep him in. He's a flight risk, and he's alleged of doing some really heinous things, even in this brief indictment.
This whole situation has turned into this intense battle between what's legal and what's humane. His defense team is absolutely fuming about the conditions he's being kept in. They're saying that the 23-hour lockdown, constantly monitored calls, and extreme isolation are basically punishing him before he's even been found guilty of anything. And honestly, they might have a point. But the federal prosecutors are standing their ground. They're insisting that all these strict measures are absolutely necessary to keep him from interfering with witnesses or causing more problems. It's like watching two heavyweight champions duke it out in the ring. The question on everyone's lips right now is whether Diddy, a man who once had everything at his fingertips, can ever bounce back from this. Is his legacy completely destroyed? Can anyone come back from something this devastating? I honestly don't know. And that uncertainty is what makes this whole saga so captivating.
I feel like a lot of people haven't witnessed things, you know? Like, I think a lot of people go through life without any heartache and pain, any struggle, any real, like, you know, a lot of times you talk to people and you go, oh, they'll say stuff like, oh yeah, I heard about that. Or, oh yeah, that's so sad. But in their life, at this point in their life, they have never said something like, yeah, I saw that, I witnessed that, I was there, you know? Because a lot of people aren't going to experience what you experience. You know, it could be based on where they live at, but like, you know, like I said, growing up in the ghetto, I'm just saying, like, you got to think about, I'm here talking about this stuff. And I was a person that was in the ghetto and seen a lot of bad decisions being made, you know. I could write a book. I could literally write a book on my life story. But yeah, I don't know, like, that's why it's like, because, you know, a lot of people talk about the Luigi situation. A lot of people believe that he's innocent. Some people say they don't think that that's him. Whatever you may believe, whatever. I'm just saying, like, once you get in jail, it's like all bets are off.
Every single piece of this heartbreaking story, from the brutal prison conditions to that gut-wrenching moment when his son broke down in tears, points to one unavoidable truth. The system has Diddy in its grip, and it is not letting go. That judge's ruling hit like a thunderbolt. Diddy will remain locked up, period. Can you imagine having every phone call recorded, every moment of your day monitored, hour after isolated hour, and then to see your own child collapse emotionally in a public courtroom? My heart is absolutely shattered thinking about what this family is going through. As we follow this unfolding drama, the stakes just keep getting higher and higher. Everything Diddy built over decades, his empire, his reputation, his legacy, it's all hanging by a thread. It makes you wonder if fame and fortune ever truly protect anyone from facing the consequences of their actions. The truth of this situation is as cold and unyielding as those prison walls, and I, for one, can't look away.
Absolutely, and I'm sure the judge really looked into that because although we know that these are allegations, there's been no evidentiary hearing as to whether or not these actually rise to the level of obstruction. Just the idea that he is not even following the rules that are enlisted by the prison is already a sign to the judge that he may not follow any conditions that are set forth. And so those type of allegations, you know, whether or not there's been an evidentiary hearing, just speaks to the actions of the individual while incarcerated. And if you're not having good behavior at that time, the judge is going to look to say that, you know, even if you're let out and left to your own devices, it's not going to get any better. So that has not played in his favor at all.
So in their most recent filing, the government writes, the government's grand jury investigation of the defendant, including the defendant's obstruction related to this criminal case, is continuing. As part of that investigation, the government has sent grand jury subpoenas and document requests to the Bureau of Prisons, the BOP, for the defendant's monitored communications, including calls and emails. From those materials, the government has learned that the defendant has persisted in engaging in obstructive conduct since he entered BOP custody. Among other things, the defendant has engaged in unauthorized communications practices, including three-way calling on the monitored phone lines, use of other inmates' phone access code or PAC numbers to make phone calls on the monitored phone line, and use of a third-party text messaging provider through the BOP's monitored email system. Each of these methods of communications is prohibited by BOP. Furthermore, as set out in the government's November 15, 2024 brief, the defendant used these unauthorized methods of communications to continue to engage in obstruction, including by instructing third parties to reach out to witnesses and attempting to influence the jury pool in this criminal case. Now look, prosecutors, they previously cited as an example this call from October 4th, where apparently he's speaking from jail to one of his adult sons.
When we connect all the dots in this scandalized saga, we keep coming back to that jaw-dropping moment when the judge basically slammed the door in Diddy's face. It's the ultimate reality check. No amount of fame, no amount of money, no amount of influence can override the ironclad rules of the system once it decides to come for you. Meanwhile, the public, that's us, is absolutely glued to every new development. Each revelation adds another layer to this already complex and controversial case. And that heartbreaking scene with his son? It was like watching the human cost of this scandal play out in real time. The stark contrast between the defiant image Diddy tries to project and the devastating impact on his family. It really makes you stop and think about what life in the spotlight truly costs, doesn't it? But trust me when I say this story is far from over. There are so many questions still swirling around. Is this brutal lockdown the final nail in Diddy's coffin? Are these inhumane conditions and his son's emotional breakdown the missing pieces that will finally help us understand what's really happening? Or is this just another twist in a high-stakes game where even the system might not know the full truth? If you want to stay ahead of every single jaw-dropping development in this unfolding legal drama, you absolutely need to hit that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on those notifications because, honey, the truth is coming out piece by shocking piece, and I promise you do not want to miss a single moment of it. This is the kind of story that will be talked about for years to come, and you'll want to say you were there for every stunning revelation.